Hi, I'm Jack, and welcome back because I am here to give you guys a long-awaited review for one of my most anticipated movies of this year, the fourth installment in the series known as The Matrix Resurrection. It stars Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, Jessica Henwick, Jonathan Groff, and many more, and it is directed by Lana Wachowski. And before we get started, don't forget to follow me on social media. My username is down below at the bottom of the screen and in the description below, so don't forget to do that while you're at it. And I would love to hear what you thought about this movie down below before I give you my thoughts on this movie. So let me know down below in the comments section, what did you think of this movie? Were you a fan of it? Not so much? I'd love to hear it all down below, but please be civil and respectful about it. And with that said, let's get started.
The film is set after the events of the Matrix trilogy, and it follows Neo, who has no memory of who he once was, as he is offered a choice between the red pill or the blue pill. However, Neo knows what he has to do, but he doesn't realize that he has lived a life before this, and that the Matrix now is far more stronger than the previous one, and he must make a choice on what he must do.
To kick off the positives here, I thought the acting is really great. I love Keanu Reeves as a person and as an actor, so naturally I would really enjoy him in this movie, and I did. It was really cool seeing Keanu Reeves come back as Neo for the first time in 18 years, and I loved seeing him play this Neo he's back to square one. He has no memory of who he once was before, anything that happened in the Matrix trilogy, and I love the stuff he does over the course of the movie, and of course, just like the other three, he's the main character. And then you have Carrie-Anne Moss, who comes back as Trinity, who I love as this character. Carrie-Anne Moss is great, and I love her dynamic with Keanu Reeves in the movies, especially in this one, and their relationship with one another for Neo and Trinity is a huge focus in this movie because the whole story does revolve around their love for one another. And I thought because they have great chemistry, that part of the movie really works for me. And I just love seeing how these two, the scenes they have with each other, they're really nice, really cool stuff here and there. There's some really good moments with these two. So that I really liked. And a standout of this movie I really like is Jessica Henwick as Bugs. Now, I really liked her as Colleen Wing in the Marvel Netflix shows. So I was really excited to see what's she going to do and who's she going to play, what's she going to do in this movie. And she was awesome. She was an awesome fighter. I really liked how her character looks. The blue hairstyle looks awesome. And just the action sequences she's in, she does a great job. I love her scenes with Neo and how her and her new crew, they're trying to help Neo aboard, like all just this whole mission and what's happening and all that. I really liked Jessica in this movie. Her scenes with these characters are really great. And Yahya Abdul-Mateen II plays Morpheus. Now, I know you're all wondering what happened to Lawrence Fishburne. Well, Lawrence Fishburne didn't get a call that they were going to do another Matrix movie, so he didn't come back on. But Yahya does a good job with what he has to work with as his character. He dressed like Morpheus. He acts and talks like Morpheus. So that works. And Jonathan Groff plays Agent Smith. Not a spoiler because it's in the trailer. And I thought he was good. I enjoyed him for what he had to work with. And I liked the scenes with Keanu Reeves' Neo. So that was a plus. And Priyanka Chopra-Jonas plays Sati from Matrix Revolutions, and I thought that she was good. Doesn't do too much until that middle to back half of the movie, but I enjoyed with what she had to work with. She did a good job. Just all around, I thought. And Neil Patrick Harris plays the analyst in this movie, and I thought he was good. He was fun to watch. I really enjoyed Neil Patrick Harris as an actor. He's great. So I was really curious to see what he's going to do as his character, and I enjoyed him. I really liked him as the analyst in this movie with his scenes with Neo and Trinity and just the other characters he interacts with. I thought he was great. So in the end, I thought the acting is just fantastic here. I thought everybody did a good job with what they had to do. The next positive I'm going to bring up is I thought the visual effects is great. I love the visual effects in the trilogy, even though the sequels had some really iffy parts here and there. But in this movie, I thought they looked great, especially because now we're 18 years later since Revolutions came out, and VFX and CGI and all that have really changed and grown since then. And I thought for Resurrections, I thought there are some great visuals here, especially for places like Machine City, how the Matrix looks, the characters using their abilities and all that. It looks great. And adding to that, the colors and cinematography here and there. The colors are interesting because I was used to the original trilogy having the Matrix looks a little green, a little greenish. And this movie, it's absent for the most part, where now there's a lot more colors to it. There's a lot of blue, there's a lot of red, especially with the red and the blue pill and all that. But there are a lot more visual colors to the Matrix than in the other trilogy, but it makes sense story-wise because of this being I'm not going to say it. It's a spoiler, but those who've seen this movie know what I'm going to mean by that. And so I thought the colors look beautiful in this movie. There are some really good colors that make some of the shots look really great in this movie. And the cinematography is good. A lot of the shots are very like close-ups or just shots of others, but I think there are landscape shots in this movie that I think they look great when they happen. There's some good stuff here and there when it comes to that area of the movie. Out of the 4 Matrix movies, this is by far the most humorous of the bunch because this movie tries to be meta, and by that it means when it's self-aware of what it is and that this is basically a sequel to the Matrix trilogy. There are a lot of jokes about it in that first half of the movie, and there's some funny stuff here and there, I'm not gonna lie. Even though I can't help but be like the meta feels way too on the nose and way too overused for me. There are some good funny jokes here and there, especially from one of the characters who references why this movie has to be made or something, and just the whole notion of the fact that we live in an industry with movies where now we're getting sequels, prequels, spin-offs, franchises made off of things. And I like when the movie pokes fun at it, but then there are times where it's done too much and it just pulls me out of the movie, and that I wish they focus on. But this is by far the funniest movie in the entire 4 Matrix movies. This movie also has a lot of heart because this movie heavily revolves around the romance between Neo and Trinity, and how both characters have absolutely no memory of who they once were, and they only got things through dreams. And so I really liked how they handled it. It makes this movie feel the most heartfelt of the 4 movies, and I know this is a very personal story of Lana Wachowski, who created this movie after the death of her parents. So I thought for the most part I can feel that heart coming from this movie and how it really does shine through those moments with Neo and Trinity. And I really liked how it just talks about their doomed romance with how just all the events of the trilogy, and despite Neo's role as the one and the savior, and then you got Trinity who's like the anchor, who's trying to be there for him and all that. And how it results in Revolutions where Trinity ends up dying, and I didn't like that, by the way, and Neo sacrifices himself to stop Agent Smith. And then in this movie, it picks up with that in an interesting way. But I do like how this movie heavily deals with the romance between one another. It's a huge point in this movie that I thought did a really great job with that here, and it's elevated by the fact that Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss delivered great performances in this movie. So I really enjoyed that this movie is the most heartfelt. It's the most emotional of the 4. One of my biggest issues with Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions is that they took the original movie and they tried to up the ante to 11 on like everything, which meant the action is bigger, the movie is grander in scale, and at times I feel like it doesn't work, because sometimes bigger doesn't always mean better, and I think for the sequel's case, it wasn't better. But I liked how in this movie, this is a much more smaller scale movie. It wasn't trying to be like Reloaded and Revolutions, where it's like, things are going wild, action's up to 11, all that stuff. No, it focuses on its story about Neo and Trinity after the events of Revolutions, after Neo is trying to regain who he was before and tried to like stop the machines and all that. So I loved how they finally went back to small scale, and that there is more philosophy to be found in this movie, just like in the trilogy. Because one of the things I love about the original isn't just the action sequences and visuals, which were grand at that time, but it's also just the philosophy of it all. It questions you question your reality watching this movie. And it does a lot of new things with that. And I thought Revolutions, I liked how they had some of that philosophy in there with reality and with love and all that stuff. And I thought it did a good job at those things. And I thought that for the most part, I liked how it was a smaller scale movie that brought back some of those elements I love about the original movie, and that I am happy for. Another thing I want to mention is the score. It's not by Don Davis, who composed the trilogy, but I thought the score, it's good. There's some cool stuff here and there, but it's not anything that's memorable to me. It's not anything that really blew my mind. But I thought the score is fine for what it is in this movie. And lastly, I thought this movie had a nice epilogue. I thought the third act really kicks in with these characters in the story. It's a huge point in this movie with all of these characters and how they're done this movie and what's going to happen to them. And I like how they've done it for the most part. Visually, it looks good. There's some cool stuff here and there, especially with the action, and there's some great stuff that happens in the third act. And the epilogue, I really liked the epilogue. I thought it had a nice ending to how they wrapped up this movie. It made this movie feel like if this was the last Matrix movie, then I would be completely okay with it. If they wanted to make more, then I would be curious to see what they're going to go from here, because this movie does have a nice little ending point where if they wanted to stop it here, they could. But I would be open to see what they're going to do next. And I thought this movie had a nice ending. I liked how they ended this movie and all of that. So I thought this movie did end on a satisfying note. However, I sadly have quite a lot of issues from this movie, surprisingly, and it really holds back this movie from being even greater, in my opinion, and it really bums me out to say this. The first thing I had a problem with is that I wanted to know more of what happened between Revolutions and this, because this is the first movie in 18 years, and there is such a humongous time gap between both of those movies. And the movie didn't explore all that much, sadly. The middle half of it explores like what happened to some of these characters since you last saw them, but I wanted more. Like, what happened to Zion in Matrix Revolutions? What happened to these characters, and how even some of these characters are played by different actors? So I kind of wonders what happened to the version of these characters played by the original actor. So there's a lot of stuff I wish it explored, because a lot of it was like either it was unexplored, handled in like a sentence or two, or they just were not discussed at all. And that bummed me out, because this is the first one in 18 years, and I want to know what happened after this last movie. What happened to these characters? What happened to the real world, or even what happened to the Matrix and all that? So I wish we got more of that, because I felt like it kind of lacked in those areas. Another issue I had with this movie is that, adding to that, it's a meta movie. It makes fun of the fact that movies nowadays are getting franchises and prequels and sequels and spin-offs and all these other movies and stuff, and how it pokes fun at it. It's a mixed bag for me, because there are jokes that really got a laugh out of me, and then there's some where it's just like too on the nose. It's like, I get it. You're referencing how The Matrix is so iconic, which it is, and very deserving of that. And it's just like, I get it. You don't have to remind me of like how big this was, because I get it. I knew how big it was. I know how popular it is, because I know of it, and it was deserving. So it just feels like the movie at times, the meta, it's just too over your head, and at times I don't think it was very well executed, and it kind of did not work right with me, because when you're gonna be meta, do it right and don't overuse it, because I think this movie really overused being meta, and at times it felt very hit or miss for me, even sadly on the misses side for the most part. Another problem I have with the movie is that it doesn't feel like a Matrix movie at times. That whole first half of the movie at times felt like it was parodying the original movie. And that also adds to my problem with how this movie handles nostalgia and even fan service. Because I'm a fan. I'd love to be serviced. I like fan service, even when it's done right. And with this movie, it felt like it's hit or miss for me, because it felt like they recreate moments from the original trilogy, and especially the first movie. And at times I can't help but feel like they're just recreating events of the original movie just to be like, you remember that awesome moment from the original trilogy? Yeah, you love it? Well, here's that exact same moment recreated beat for beat. And it didn't feel surprising because then it adds the movie to being a little predictable in that area of things. And it didn't feel surprising because it's like, I know how this plays out. I've seen the movie before. I've seen the trilogy a few times. I know how this is going to play out. And it plays out exactly how as it does. And beats, it's like, okay, this character is going to do this at this moment. And it happens. And I wish they didn't have to use nostalgia that way. Because in one way, for the story, I get why they're trying to do this. It makes sense. But it didn't feel like it happened because it needed to. It felt like it was just them doing it because, we love that original movie and it's very meta about how big that first movie was. So it tried to recreate those moments, and at times it's like some of it worked, but then some of it not so much. Surprisingly with this movie this is an issue I had with even the Matrix sequels, and that is I felt no stakes. I did not feel that much danger with these characters. It just feels like ever since the second movie, when Neo is finally like the one he embraces, that he's so powerful, he can fly and all that, I felt no danger from him because every time he's in a fight with somebody in those sequels, he doesn't get hurt all that much. He's so powerful. It's like he could just wipe the floor with everybody. And in this movie, especially with other characters primarily, I didn't feel like any sense of danger was happening with these characters. And plus the agents, in the first movie, the agents were menacing. Like, I would be scared if I were to basically come up against an agent. But in this movie, the agents felt they weren't terrifying to me. They didn't feel any dangerous to me because I felt no sense of danger. If you don't have a sense of danger for me to invest myself in, I'm not going to feel any stakes, and I'm not going to feel like your characters are in like the place where they might possibly die. And it bums me out to say that because the only movie in this series where I ever felt stakes was that original movie. Even in Revolutions with Zion and all that, I felt no danger. I felt like it was going to be fine. With what was happening. And even in this movie, I didn't feel much danger with these characters and all that. And also the execution of that did not quite work. So it really pains me to say that I did not feel any sense of tension or danger from these characters, and that really severely holds this movie back for me. Another problem I have is that certain characters felt really underutilized or even wasted. Like, I don't want to drop names and give spoilers, but those who've seen the movie will have an idea of what I'm talking about. There are at least 3 to 4 characters in this movie that I can name off the top of my head, and I felt like they did not do very much in this movie. So many characters felt underutilized to me, and some of them shocked me because of how much I like this particular character. So it really shocked me because, again, I like these characters, and the characters that felt underutilized to me really just saddened me because I love this character and this actor playing this character. So the fact that they didn't feel like they had much to do in this movie, nor did it feel like they had any sense of place in the story, it really shocked me because it was like you had these actors play these characters and they were great from an acting standpoint, but they didn't do much. They really didn't do much from the story. Some of them didn't do anything until the climax happened, and some of them, one of them in particular, I think felt wasted the most, is there. And he's in there for the first half, maybe a sequence in the middle, and then he's back in the climax for some reason, and he felt wasted to me. I felt like you can just remove his character from the entire movie past that first half, nothing would have been different. Like, it made me feel like Cheetah from Wonder Woman 84, where she has a story, but if you remove her from Wonder Woman 84, the whole movie still works. And that's how I felt with some of these characters in the movie. And it also saddens me to say this because some of these characters I do like a lot, especially from The Matrix, but this movie did not capitalize on some of them as well as they could have, and that really just did not work for me at all. Another thing it really saddens me to say is while there are some solid action sequences here and there, especially in the middle, like in the trailers between Neo and Agent Smith in the train, I thought this is easily the weakest action out of the entire 4, considering that The Matrix revolutionized the action genre, and because like it's been 18 years since the last movie, I was really excited to see like what are they going to do to really change things, especially with action and all that nowadays. And it did not change it didn't do anything new for me. A lot of the action in this movie felt kind of like generic action I've seen in so many recent movies, maybe even done better. And what makes it worse isn't really the choreography, that isn't anywhere near the level of the first three movies, but the editing of them felt choppy at times. It felt like they were quick cutting from time to time and they didn't feel in focus, and it really shocks me. Because if you're going to make a Matrix movie, I do expect good action, or even great action, to be exact. But this movie, there was like one or two standout action sequences. The rest of them, did not do anything very special to me, and it did not do anything that really screamed Matrix. And that adds to my problem that this didn't feel like a Matrix movie at times, especially with the meta-ness, making it feel like it's parodying itself, not taking itself seriously. And then you got the action, which didn't feel anywhere near the level of those first three movies. But probably my biggest problem from this entire movie is that it is super slow paced in the middle of this movie. Like, I was hearing from the reaction, some people who love it say it was really well paced, and some people who don't like it say it's not well paced. And I'm in the middle to negative end when it comes to pacing, because once they got to a certain location in the middle of this movie, the whole movie just drags for such a long period of time. I'm just like, why is it taking so long for this to just move on or to move forward? And it's worse because the exposition is told primarily through dialogue, and that is also a big problem I had with even the Star Wars prequels and even the Matrix sequels. And at times, because they deliver so much of this information through dialogue, where characters are just walking and talking and they're just delivering lines like, hey, remember this one moment? You know, this one character from the trilogy? Yes, just that. Yeah. It just doesn't engage me, because if you're not going to show me these things that you're talking about, then it's hard for me to connect and to lock on with what is happening with these characters. But because there is so much expository dialogue, and it's worse because at times it ain't that interesting for me, and at times I felt bored when those things were happening. It's like, it's hard for me to lock on or to care when all of this information that I need to know, or even the characters need to know, are all done through exposition dialogue. Like, at least show me these things you're talking about, and there are cases where they do, and I appreciate them for that. But so much of it is through dialogue, and I can't help but at times feel like it's hard for me to really lock on to what's happening, because I could only focus on characters speaking for such a long period of time until I just snap out of it. And that happened quite a lot with this movie. And then the pacing is really slow in that middle half. The first half of this movie was fine. Even the climax portion of the movie was paced well, but that middle area of this movie felt really slow to me. It dragged throughout, and it really it shocked me, because I love the pacing in the first two movies. The third movie, not so much, but the middle of this movie, not very well paced for me, sadly. And then one final problem is there is a lot of archive footage where when a character's speaking, it gives you a look of an archive footage of that character from the original trilogy. Just like what was in the trailer, the second trailer. When Jonathan Groff speaks, you get a archive footage of Hugo Weaving. And at times it was cool, but then at times it felt unnecessary. They added way too much of it, because it's like, I get who this character is. I know the original actor that plays this character, and I don't need to see all these archive footage, because I rewatched the entire trilogy before this movie. So I still remember all these events that have been happening to these characters, and the movie kind of has to keep showing you archive footage throughout the movie in between moments. And I'm like, I didn't need that personally. It just did not work for me. And I wish they really toned down upon how much archive footage they used, because they certainly did not need that much, at least for me.
In conclusion, this movie is a solid reintroduction to the Matrix series. It's a nice epilogue to the Matrix trilogy with some great acting, a great focus on Neo and Trinity's relationship, although there is some wasted potential I found throughout this movie that could have been capitalized better. And in the end, I'm going to give The Matrix Resurrections a B. And this is a movie that I recommend for fans of The Matrix only.
I definitely do not think this is as bad as some people are making it out to be. There are just some issues I had with the movie that just could have been done better, but nothing that makes this movie an abomination or anything. No. I do appreciate what Lana Wachowski tried to do with this movie, tried to make things bold and that it had some nice concepts. I will give it that. But yeah, overall, I like it. I just don't love the movie. That's all. But yeah, I don't know if this is my favorite sequel, actually, the more I think about it. It's either this one or it's Reloaded, because there are some things both movies do better than the other, but I can definitely say far better than the third one. It's better than Revolutions. I would rather watch this one any day of the week. So that's that at least. It does have some great moments, some great acting and stuff like that. So it's a good movie. I definitely think you should at least watch it and make your own opinion. But yeah, you can definitely go see it in theaters and on HBO Max while you can. So try to check it out if you want to. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on The Matrix Resurrections. What did you think about this movie? Let me know down below in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this movie. And where are you on the spectrum? Did you love this movie? Did you think it was fine? Or did you not like this movie? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. And thank you guys so much for watching. And don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button. And stay tuned for more.
After all these years, to be going back to where it all started. Back to the Matrix.